Hi, Nick.
Hello, Philip. Pleasure
Hello.
to meet you.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the Digital Voice. Thank you very much for your time, for finding time for us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
As far as I know, you worked as a head of brand space projects in Adidas HQ for almost like 6 years, right? And now you're managing director of the ONSIDE, a retail and consumer insights consultancy firm based in UK. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, I was head of branded space projects for Adidas for the UK and Ireland market. So not global HQ, but United Kingdom and Ireland. And yeah, I was there for 6 years. Great brand. And it gave me and my team a great opportunity to work with some even better brands, football teams, prestigious retailers such as Harrods, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea. Yeah, there's a long list of very successful projects that I'm very proud of.
Very good. Could you please tell a bit more, maybe about with what sorts of projects, what types of projects you were involved with? Not the exact projects, I mean, but maybe omni-channel projects or marketing projects.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a big part of my team's responsibility and the function that I headed up was about how Adidas showed up at the point of purchase within wholesale. So part of the overall sort of omni-channel approach. We were very, very targeted on the key city of London. So a lot of our projects and funds that we had signed off were to secure space in prominent locations in London, and then in some sort of tertiary key city locations in the UK. We also focused investment into the most important retail partners as well, not necessarily the ones that gave us the best profitability or return, but certainly the ones that gave us the biggest impact in the marketplace.
Yeah, that makes sense, sure. And now you're the managing director of the consultancy firm OnSite. Can you please tell us a little bit more about what's that about?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I left Adidas last year, and I'd always wanted to set up my own consultancy, really focusing on the consumer, retail evolution, and uh, analytics and insight. So, OnSide have a number of key services that we offer retailers and brands, and they're all designed to really help them navigate their way through the retail marketplace. Physically, digitally, and emotionally as well. I know from the work I did with Adidas, it's a real challenge and a burden sometimes to deliver brand excellence time after time after time. And to do so, you have to keep yourself abreast with competitors in the marketplace and consumer sort of shopping habits and trends in general. So, OnSide now are able to deliver that to brands and retailers outside of the sporting goods sector, home, automotive, electronics. You know, um, those are our sort of key specialist areas. But essentially, we are a consumer insights agency that service brand and retail marketplace.
Great. So I think let's leave the first question. Let's leave the most obvious one. I think you were asked about this numerous amounts of times. How did the pandemic affect the customer behavior and the retail in general? But mostly, I think the customer behavior, how it changed.
Yeah, I think the consumer behaviour was very quickly forced to a bigger reliance on online shopping. In the UK, in particular, online shopping across all sort of retail sectors was about sort of 19-20%. Obviously, only non-essential retail opened during the pandemic, so retailers were even then forced online. Some of which would purchase their essential items online through because they didn't want to go into, say, grocery stores. But those customers who desperately wanted their non-essential items, whether that's fashion or luxury items, they would use online to service that requirement. So obviously, footfall disappeared because all retail, apart from non-essential retail, closed. The consumer, who already had established a quite a habitual reliance on e-commerce to fulfil their needs, just turned to it. And thankfully, in many cases in the UK, it was up to the task. The reliance to fulfil it. There would have needed more delivery drivers. Certain big brands like Amazon would work with UK grocery retailers to fulfill food orders, and that required drivers to you know to enter the gig economy and help consumers get their needs, but also retailers fulfill their demand. So it's really interesting. Britain is is a nation of retailers. We're also a nation of shoppers. We love to shop. It's a real big pastime. So the consumer sort of struggled, and I think that showed when the first lockdown, the second lockdown, and the third lockdowns were lifted. The consumer was deprived of that sort of physical shopping experience. A lot of people do thrive on, and it is a social experience or social activity rather, and they wanted to get back on track. So I was in London and Manchester on a number of times as retail reopened, and it was great to see stores busy again from somebody who's got a vested interest in the retail marketplace. It was fantastic to see retailers putting in place social distancing measures too. To really help it along, but unfortunately, a lot of retailers and big brands have struggled and have disappeared from the high streets due to the huge turnover impact that COVID-19 created.
Sure, sure. Um, what seemed to be, like the best strategy to overcome and to adapt to this new reality and to the new demands of the clients? Because if I'm understanding you correctly, the clients are shifting more and more towards this digital plus physical experience. So this is obviously a result of them being locked at home and only left with the like e-commerce experience.
Of
So
course.
now they're used to it and expecting this. So what seems to be the best strategy for the retailers now?
I think the best strategy, they needed to have put their strategies in place a good few years ago. The retailers that really performed well during the pandemic were the retailers that weren't overburdened with too many physical retail stores, which ultimately would have been closed. The UK government put in place quite a generous furlough scheme to allow retailers to furlough staff rather than create redundancies. But I generally do think the retailers that say 10 years ago started to reduce their reliance on physical retail stores and operate with more of a optimum level of retail stores in, say, 40 UK locations rather than 100, and at the same time would have invested in their ecom service proposition. In terms of getting that product to the consumer as quickly as possible, making sure there was good availability. So for the brands that hadn't invested in the last 10 to 5 years, responsibly from a profitability perspective through physical and e-com channels, those were the ones that did struggle, and those unfortunately were the ones that have disappeared from the high street now. I guess during the pandemic, I think the brands and retailers that were able to establish a very supportive tone of voice to say shepherd their physical consumers into e-commerce. Because they were potentially dealing with a lot of people who hadn't adopted e-commerce as part of their sort of shopper experience. So there's a bit of education there. So yeah, I think I think the retailers that were caught out, were found out, and they really struggled. And as I said, there were some exits from the marketplace. But yeah, really going back 10 years, this sort of D2C switch. From wholesale business models to sort of more sustainable D2C and e-com model is definitely the only strategy that's got successful retailers through the national lockdowns.
Okay, maybe you have any like specific insights into how the points of purchase will transform to adopt to the new consumer behavior.
Yeah, sure. I think consumers, as I said before, inherently want to shop physically and like to shop physically. I think there's so many tools in place to allow them to have more experience and engagement at that point of purchase, whether they made that purchase in store or not. There's a retail term called showrooming, where the consumer will go into a store and they'll pick up the sneaker, the trainer, or they play with the Apple Tech in a store. They'll think about it. They may even go back and want to get some more information from the store teams, but they might fundamentally go and buy it online because they might have a better range of choice, sizes, colors, etc. That sometimes they can't that can't be fulfilled in physical retail. But the role of physical retail, in many ways, the stores that do exist, the most basic element needs to be they need to be neat, clean, tidy, and attractive places to shop. For a retailer to really create impact, drive footfall, maximize engagement, there needs to be sort of experience at the heart of that shopping interaction. So the retailers that do invest in, enhanced digital to potentially create better storytelling, retailers that invest in store training and staff training, so they're able to provide better service, more knowledgeable service. They'll be performing well. But then also the brands and retailers that have got a very integrated um, and they're very connected through, say, social and e-com, will be able to create the best experience. So you'll see more sort of Instagrammable moments created at the point of purchase in stores. You'll also see more gamification, augmented reality, to make sure that the consumer does have a real reason to potentially get in the car or get on public transport and go to a physical store. Also, I think stores are likely to become bigger. In the UK at the moment, there's significant um, issue with vacant retail stores, driven by big exits in the marketplace. Certainly over the last 5 years, but certainly within the last year, with the departure of Debenhams and Topshop, and previous to that, BHS. There's a lot of big retail spaces available. So you'll see those spaces taken over by retailers that might want to expand and take new space, and therefore might be able to strike better lease deals with the landlords. Or you'll see potentially pure players enter the marketplace in key retail locations, so they're able to have a physical retail relationship with their consumer too.
So you think that retail is becoming less and less a point of attracting new traffic, like it used to be in the days of a big shopping malls, and huge amounts of traffic are getting to know the brand through the entering the retail stores. So now it's rather providing an experience or something. Can you maybe mention some kind of examples? I know that Adidas has an outdoor brand, like a sub brand. I don't remember the name, like
Terex.
Terex.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they have, from what we see, they have quite a presentation in their stores, and they are thinking
yeah,
about new formats, like not a full scale store, but maybe a small pop-up somewhere in the middle of the shopping center, that like what we see right now they're doing in the Middle East. So
yeah.
maybe any specifics on the formats that could be driving this new experience.
Yeah, sure. I think the big brands have the budgets to really invest, and I think the big brands and sporting brands such as say Nike and Adidas, over the last sort of 5 years in particular, they definitely have been tapering their store estate. Gone are the times when they would say have 20 stores in a country; they might only have six now. But that would also potentially see an increase in factory outlets because of the product life cycle. Getting new product into in season, whether it's ecom, D2C, or through key wholesale partners, has a certain lifespan. So you'll see the physical stores, flagships, and regional in stores and regional mega malls really show up and create brand impact with purpose, because the purpose of those stores are to surprise, delight, engage, and convert that consumer. They want them to make that purchase there and then. There's only a small window, really, in the grand scheme of things, for that to happen. So factory outlets, say throughout Europe, MacArthur Glen are the biggest operator of factory outlets. The factory outlet experience now is almost like a high street experience. The brands are investing back into their stores because they know they've got two chances to engage and convert that consumer. A full price sort of prime consumer, but they also have that um, sort of discount consumer, which in this modern world is still highly valuable. Certainly when brands are operating through a D2C model. Um, Retailers like sort of brands like Adidas as well, I guess, have their sub brands. So obviously Adidas have their original stores, which are purely fashion stores, and recently they've opened up a Terex outdoor store in Shanghai, which is a really modern retail space that tells the Adidas Terex um, sort of product authority with great impact, with the engagement tools that are required to really capture a consumer's attention. You will see more and more pop-ups. So, as I said before, pure players who are looking at testing the water from a physical retail perspective may take a short-term 3 to 6 month lease on a key within a key retail location. So, for example, in the UK, another sporting goods brand, Gymshark, a few years ago, did test the water with a physical retail presence in Covent Garden in London. And right now, they're doing a Gymshark nail bar or salon, whatever they're called, in Shoreditch in London. And if you look at the big brands, and again, another sporting goods retailer that are pure players, Zalando, they could very easily enter the physical retail marketplace. But the only thing that's holding them back are their respective agreements with the sporting goods and lifestyle brands that they currently trade with on online platform.
Yeah, sure. That makes a lot of sense because obviously, with their width of assortment, they could, seriously harm the sales of some of the big brands. So,
Yeah.
there is a controversial thought for a classic retailer. Then, in what you're saying, it's like, mm, if it's a place of experience, if you need to give the client the experience right then and there, and not just to convert him, giving him some kind of promotion or something that we're more
Mhm.
used to, then is it fine leaving the client without the purchase right here and now? Because all of the retail is usually their main KPI is, of course, conversion.
There's a lot of costs associated with operating a store, and in particular flagship stores. But if we were just talking about typical high street or shopping mall store, the overheads are high. The staff overheads, stock overheads, utilities overheads, you name it. So therefore, it's vitally important that they are still able to convert in a physical retail store. But let's just say, retailers have gone through a period of a strategic, say, store reduction program over the last sort of 10, 8, 5 years. And what they're left with are some very well placed stores in key retail locations within key cities. With footfall, which is the most important element, footfall, because you can't really, retailers can't do anything without footfall. If they're to achieve, say, a respectable conversion rate of 15%, which sounds quite low, but 15% footfall at point of purchase in retail is actually really good. So the retailer will use their branch merchandisers and analytics to make sure that the stores are merchandised with an adequate level of stock, to make sure there's not too much stock committed to a physical store, but just enough to meet that demand. And that is a real challenge. One thing that retailers can do to sort of circumvent that issue is, in the future, when I mean future, I mean not too distant future. You'll see retailers using high street stores as fulfillment centres. So you'll see less distribution centres, dotted around a country, say 2 or 3. You might see 20, which are actually contiguous to a physical retail store. So in the UK, there's a retailer called Argos, and Argos is almost like a proto Amazon. You know, all their stock is back of house and front of house. You make that purchase decision through a catalog or say an online sort of digital interface. You may see retailers actually adopt that strategy so that the back of house of their store, and as I mentioned before, there's a lot of big units out there that are currently vacant. They might decide to use those stores as fulfillment centers. And what that will do is get away from the issue of having too much stock committed to a store, because they're actually using those stores as a fulfillment center for a mega city, you know, Moscow or Paris or London or Berlin, but they're also using them for, say, secondary key cities within a country, say sort of Manchester or um, Lyon, for example. So I think retailers can play really smart with how their physical retail stores are set up to make sure that the consumer that visits makes that purchase is highly likely to make that purchase. You know, you never want to disappoint a customer with poor stock availability. You know, that's when they will shop around. They'll go to a competitor, or they'll then fulfill that purchase online. And it's massively important that that online shopper experience is as simple as possible. You know, they want the click-through rate to be as short and neat, um, and easy to navigate as possible.
Yeah, and so I guess that this will also include some adjustments to be made on how the stores are being replenished. Because if you're working for those two channels, not your usual typical retail, but now you're also a fulfillment center for the e-commerce orders, then you need to replenish those stores in a different manner, right?
Of course, yeah, and I think that the technology's there. You know, at the moment, there's all manner of flagships in London or Moscow or Paris that, at the moment, are taking their stock from satellite distribution centers that are, say, within the sort of greater metropolitan area, and they're having to get stock into the stores or into their key local stockists. Having that physically in the high street, and it will be a massive help from a fulfillment perspective. But then getting it out to the customer who's working in an office or they're at home in the next province, that's important. How did he get it there? Is there a version of Deliveroo where people will literally bike it over to you in a backpack, or will there be using electric vehicles or even robots or drones to get that product to the consumer? But replenishing the store potentially could become a very, very straightforward process if the back of house is also a fulfillment center.
Yeah, it's the last mile thing is super exciting, I guess.
Yeah,
So yeah, we actually I'm working in the Echo shoes company in Russia, so we actually use the something that we call ship from store mechanic. So we're
yeah,
using 16 retail locations as fulfillment centers to send the clients their orders directly from the store. And there's another trend actually in Russia, born by the pandemic, that customers are now expecting those express deliveries. We have the Yandex is actually they're
yeah.
entering the UK market with a brand called Yango.
Okay.
And So they're doing the 15 minutes delivery of the groceries.
Wow.
So after like a year of pandemic and being spoiled by those 1 hour deliveries of your food, your favorite groceries, and stuff like this, of course, people are starting to expect sort of the same experience with the fashion and your other non-essential brands like that.
That's right.
Okay. So I'm very interested in your take on, like pure e-commerce moving into offline.
Before, and I've got no, corporate authority to make this comment really, but they're really well set in terms of who they have selected as their fulfillment distribution partners. Getting stock out to hundreds of thousands of customers globally. And they have such a strong infrastructure as an e-commerce brand. Crucially for them, they are a brand. They own themselves in entirety. So they can they'd be able to strike some pretty good real estate um, deals, as I said, in key retail locations up and down the UK or Europe or further afield. And no doubt, that's something that they are planning to do. Um, I feel there are expert firms out there who could help them from a EPOS system perspective, stock management perspective as well, because when you're dealing with physical stores, there's physical stock, there's physical movement of stock. So, choose your third parties, wisely. Um, because you need to operate as be as profitable as possible. And the point there you made about sort of experience and service is key. I think there'll be a lot of consumers out there who'd be really keen to see some of their sort of much loved sort of e-com brands start to open physical retail locations, because consumers this day and age very much become a real fan of the brand. You can see that from how they interact with the brand through their social channels, the amount of likes, shares, comments, the assets and influences that are associated with those brands. Also, when they have tested the water with physical retail propositions, the demand has been huge. But I think retail is traveling through a digital revolution, and it's been traveling through it for the last 10 years. It's not something that's just been triggered by the pandemic. So, one statement I've always say when I have conversations is with retailers and brands is, invest to impress. Don't just sort of try and get into the marketplace. Invest to make that impact. Invest in the right areas. I spent some time last week with a new retail concept in the UK, and quite surprisingly, refreshingly, and is that their business model, there isn't any physical pickup stock in the store. The store space is all about engagement and discovery, really attracting the consumer in, who's in, say, the mall or the high street, into their store space, for them to have that sense of curiosity and to say, what is this? What am I supposed to do? What can I buy? But, um, the brand and retail. I won't mention who it is at the moment, but they've created something that is so unique. And it's all about experience. It's all about engagement. It's all about really sort of creating moments that surprise and delight a consumer. Really helping a consumer sort of experience a brand or a product that they've never really had much knowledge of before, and then helping them, make a decision through to purchase, via that brand's website, or whether it's through that brand's store. So that says it all. This day and age, a big retailer can open a retailer can open. Sorry, a retail concept can open that doesn't actually sell any physical product. It's all about really focusing on that experience. So that's probably the most refreshing thing I've seen in the last couple of years in retail.
I think our listeners and viewers are dying to know. Of course, you cannot disclose the name, but maybe some of the experiences, because it sounds very. You're entering the store, you didn't have the product there. Maybe you're using some kind of digital interface to browse through the products. But can you tell a bit more how it works, or maybe not for this particular one, but what if I was like a client entering your agency and asking about, I want to open this sort of experience, what would you recommend me? Like, what blows and whistles might be there?
Yeah, sure. I think the most refreshing element of it was the environment they created, but the staff, the crew that present and demonstrate the products and brands that they, let's say, curate. A lot of thought has gone into their retail identity, as well as the brands and products that they show. So if you picture an Apple store, you're always met with a very professional, very well educated, very knowledgeable um, sales associate who's able to take you through any sort of consumer purchase journey that you may need. So it might be about discovery, it might be about education, or it might just be straight purchase. I'm here, I want to buy that right now. And having those members of staff in a physical retail space that are able to really engage you and really converse with you is something that's really innate to us as human beings, but also as shoppers. Physical, person to person contact that's genuine, it's friendly. And then add to that, some sensory stimulation, which might be, say, digital or audio, or maybe even taste and smell. And you end up with a retail experience that is impressive and memorable. So, as I said, invest to impress, and this retail concept certainly has done that.
Great. So the main KPIs of a concept like this will still be conversion and like items sold, or it might be like new known consumers or something else, something new.
Yeah, I think it's about click through and conversion. This retail concept makes use of QR codes, which, as you know, can be tracked. And those QR codes take you through to sort of like a hosting page, and it allows you to put products in your basket. And then you're able to then click through and make that purchase on the retailer's own website. So in many respects, it's a showroom. Um, and what it allows are brands and retailers that might not be well positioned to physically commit to a physical retail uh, store because of the overheads, but they really want to get their product out there and get their product sort of seen and touched and known. So yeah, the business model there, the key KPI is footfall, engagement, and then that click through to purchase, which in the background you'd have the analytics that talks allows them to identify the consumer demographic who's making those visits, those clicks, and those purchases.
Great. I really want to know your take also on the topic of direct to consumer brands versus those big giant marketplaces with their huge, budgets. Uh, what do you think like the brands should do? Should they become a part of the everybody of course wants to pursue their brand value and engage clients into their brand, but it's so tempting to go along with a huge marketplace like Zalando. It's much easier. They take a lot of headaches from the retailer. Do you see any duality in this, or what are the best strategies for the brands here?
Okay, my first thoughts on that are that I think a key priority right now for any brand or retailer is they must integrate themselves with the home of the future. So, home of the future is about what brands and products does a consumer want in their home, um, and what brands and retailers do they have in their home. So 10 years ago the consumer might have to shop with 15 different brands or retailers to get the products that help them live their lives, helps them furnish their home, helps them make their home more comfortable and functional, and allows them sort of to dress well and to be happy. I think that requirement in terms of the amount of retailers and brands that they shop with has started to really taper down. So it would be remiss of me not to say, the power of Amazon, through the physical marketplace, they cover everything. But now they're turning their, huge funds and budgets into very, very targeted, very focused retail propositions. Physical retail propositions. So whether that's Amazon Fresh, their sort of just walk out convenience grocery format, Amazon 4 Star, which is actually just opened in the UK, and then their recently announced Amazon department stores. And those are really clever because it allows them to trade and have a bold, strong um, retail tone of voice in the physical marketplace, using their digital mega platform of Amazon to sort of to capture the consumer Prime subscribers and put them into physical retail. But then I think what will happen is certain brands will start to select Amazon to be their sort of fulfillment retail partner. So it'd be very interesting to see what an Amazon department store looks like in terms of, say, any sort of contiguous concessional branded spaces that Amazon will be able to co-create with them. So again, that will be there for the benefit of that brand or retailer, help them fulfill their sort of D2C strategy too. In the UK, there's recently been some brands that have either exited the marketplace, so Gap, for example, or there might be a brand or a retailer that may switch their e-com platform. So you might be aware that Next in the UK have, I hate to use the term open source, but they've opened up their e-com fulfillment platform to brands to actually utilize. So Gap's sort of e-com proposition in the UK will actually be fulfilled by Next. Reese, their ecom proposition will also be fulfilled by Next. And there's a big list already, and there'll be a bigger list going forward. But there's many benefits to that for those brands. They're able to offer next day delivery because they're piggybacking on the best in class ecom service that Next have established. But also, there's also going to be ecological and sustainable benefits from that, because there's physically less warehouses, there's less trucks, there's less power being consumed, and Next are able to offer a service to established brands and retailers, and I'd say Gap are probably the most high profile. Tell them, come and use our ecom system platform. We can still get your consumers that love your brand. We can still get them product next day, which I think is which is great for the consumer. It's also great for some of these brands that have struggled from a D2C and e-com perspective in recent years.
It absolutely does, but at the same moment, the brands like Nike that completely withdrew their product from Amazon, I think, a couple of years ago, would argue that by entering this huge machine of like Amazons and other marketplaces, they're lacking direct communication to the client, personal information of the
Hmm.
client, and feeding the client this brand. Just a branded message from time to time
Yeah,
to leverage and to use um, the ability to sell the client when you need, because
yeah,
obviously you can use the direct communication and you cannot
yeah,
in
yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah, 100%, 100% agree. Nike's exit of Amazon, as well as they closed down hundreds of wholesale accounts globally over the last few years, is purely designed to enhance their D2C proposition, physically and e-com. So yeah, they wouldn't entertain a platform, a co platform, as I've just mentioned, because they're one of the biggest brands in the world. The reason why a brand might exit Amazon is to get back control of how they look and how they're presented, and every aspect of that product life cycle. It's vitally important that brands are able to deliver a minimum standard of a very efficient and logical ecom sales experience for the consumer. They're able to show up well with aspirational, engaging flagship stores. Which, as I said, there's fewer D2C flagship stores now on a country by country basis. They're either not opening as many or they're closing them for profitability reasons. And you also want to make sure that the wholesale partners that you do select are upholding your brand values, are able to deliver sort of that brand impact and brand desire that your brand needs. So, for example, in the UK, recently Curry's PC World have rebranded to just Curry's, and in doing so, they've created a more simplified um, proposition. They've also taken a color, the color purple, to be their new brand color. If you visit their new stores, there's new fascias, there's new staff uniform, there's new wayfinding and messaging at the point of purchase. But they don't sell any own brand product. It's all wholesale um, uh, digital technology, TVs, electronics, white goods, um, personal electronics, etc. So those brands are now feel more comfortable that the investment, say Samsung might make with Curry's, they're able to have a physical um, space that allows them to showcase their latest and greatest brand and their wider range. In the UK, John Lewis has been the master of showrooming, but they've also been one of the early masters of e-commerce fulfillment. You go into their stores, and John Lewis have partnerships with Google, where they try and talk about the importance of having a connected home. And if it's a connected home, it's not just the technology that's in it; it's how that home is decorated and furnished. So obviously, John Lewis can deliver the wider range to fulfil that for the consumer. So yes, I think it's a really interesting period now in retail. There's a lot of investment. I think the retailers who are slow to invest are going to struggle. I actually think that some retailers who are investing well and in a significant to a significant level, will also still struggle because it's vitally important that they're investing in the right way and they're utilizing, the right third parties or the right firms to help them deliver what they need to be able to show up and grow in the future marketplace.
That's good you mentioned this because it brings us right to the last question. What do you think are the main mistakes to avoid in 2022, a year to come?
I think one basic mistake, and it might be a very tempting mistake from a profitability perspective, would be to stop investing. As I said, I think retail is going through a real sort of digital revolution, and it's not finished yet. There's so I think retailers still need to invest in how they show up, how their stores function, how what's their how their supply chain operates as well. So I think the key thing is to stop investing. It's been a really tough time in the last 18 months to 2 years, unprecedented, and many brands and retailers have gone. Because they weren't in a fit position to be able to weather the storm. So I think fundamentally, the brands and retailers that stop investing and think that they're out of the woods will struggle. I think the brands that invest in the right way will perform well. I think brands that are able to invest in physical retail experience will create an advantage for themselves. So yeah, I'd say the biggest mistake is to stop investing.
Great. Nick, thank you very much for the
You're
wisdom. Thank
welcome.
you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And so we'll have the link to your website. I know that you have some very nice PDF reviews on your website, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that our listeners and they of course will listen to this interview in translation, but to some of you who know English can go to the link and download some of the PDFs from the Nick's website.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to share some of my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Nick. Have a great day. See you. Bye
You're
bye.
welcome. Cheers, Philip.